Welcome to Lit with Lloyd. I am your host, Lloyd Russell. And shout out to KCAT for making this podcast happen. My guest today is Jessica Rosenberg, who has written a series of books that are paranormal and fantasy books that are called cozies. So we will find out what that means, along with everything else. Welcome, Jessica. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Good. Hopefully you'll say that at the end. So I have heard of cozy mysteries. I've never heard of a cozy fantasy or paranormal. So is that a genre, and how did you come to do that?
I would say it's an emerging genre. I think it's in reaction to the world is a horrible place right now, and people want to escape into really just happy worlds. So low stress, very low stakes, just kind of like a happy place to escape into.
And that's basically what cozy refers to?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So that it's going to be low stress fiction. The stakes are going to be low. People are going to be able to just ease into the story. No too many emotions. It's going to be just a comforting place to hang out.
How did you pick these particular genres?
So actually, in the thick of 2020, I was following books of authors that I read a lot of, and they started, a group of them banded together and decided to create the genre called Paranormal Women's Fiction. And so there were 13 of them, and they said, we're all going to write a series in this genre, and we're going to promote it together. And so they kind of launched the entire Paranormal Women's Fiction genre, and then out of that grew cozy fantasy and cozy paranormal. So it's kind of like an overarching, it kind of includes all of that. So I was at home, I was really lonely, I missed all my friends, I wanted to be able to go to coffee shops and hang out with them, and so I literally wrote a book that feels like you're having coffee with your best friends.
Wow. How did you even find out about this group?
So I read a lot of the authors' other books.
Okay.
And so they were publishing, and I was on mailing lists, and so I heard about it that way.
Okay. So what made you decide to start writing?
Well, I've been writing ever since I was a kid. I've always been writing stories. So we recently, a couple of years ago, we moved, and I found stories I was writing in middle school. They weren't very good. And I have a background in marketing and a background in all sorts of different things. And for me, writing novels was always going to be my fallback. If all the other stuff didn't work out, that's what I was going to do. And then it turns out that it's a much more fun career than any of the other stuff I did. So I'm very glad that I finally decided to really make a go of it.
And is this something you basically do full time?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, between taking care of the dogs, the cat, the children, the house,
Yeah,
running marketing for my husband's law firm, everything else.
Okay. So basically life is what you're talking
Exactly.
about.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you start writing the current books that you've written? And let me back up. How many books have you written so far?
I honestly don't know that I can answer that question. I've written at least a dozen. I have published 6. And there was one, I published 7 technically. One is a different genre that was published back in 2013. And this genre, I have currently 6 books out and a 7th in the works.
Okay. And what about the other 5 or 6 that you mentioned as part of the 12?
They are novels that I've written in the past that weren't very good, and so they're sitting on a shelf somewhere waiting one day maybe to be edited. There's a sci-fi one, there's just a small town slice of life kind of book. There's a couple different things.
You know, there are many famous authors who wrote books that they didn't get published until they got well known, and then they went back and published them.
I mean, that sci-fi one is like a reverse Robin Hood in space kind of story that I have high hopes for, but down the road. I'm going to stick to this one for a while.
Okay. And of the 6 that you've got published and the 7th one coming, are they part of a series? Are they standalones?
So there's a first series that's 4 books. It follows the story of a 40-year-old newly divorced single mom who discovers she's a witch when she inherits a magical bakery. And so she has to learn to live on her own and also the whole worldview has changed because now she has to make room for magic. She doesn't really believe in it. She fights it all the way. And so that series is a 4-book series. Each book is standalone, but they're sequential. And then she has a cousin who owns a bookshop, and the second series is a spin-off, and this is the story of her cousin. Her cousin has chronic anxiety and a panic disorder, and she develops the ability to reunite lost items to their owners, and it pushes her way out of her comfort zone, and she has to learn to handle all of that despite her panic disorder and the wanting to be in her own safe little world.
How did you come up with your storylines?
They really came to me. So I've always wanted to own a bakery coffee shop. Always. It's just much easier, less overhang to write about it. And owning a bookshop, a cozy bookshop, has always seemed to me like the ideal.
That's great.
That's kind of where it came from.
Okay. All right. So when did you start writing number 1? And which one is that? And how long did it take to write?
So number 1 is Butter Sugar Magic. I wrote it in 2020. And my goal then was to sell it to a traditional publisher. So that one took like 5 or 6 months to write and really perfect and make it as good as possible. And at some point after sending it out to dozens of agents at a time when there was a shortage of paper and there was a shortage of storage space and there was a shortage of employees and publishers weren't publishing anything. And it's kind of a new genre. It's kind of a risky thing. And I kept getting notices from agents saying it's great, but there's just no road to market for this. And I thought, everyone else is self-publishing. Why can't I do it? I have the background in marketing. I have the history. Like, I can do this myself. And so I kind of launched myself into that world, and I have not regretted it at all.
Do you think at any point that you will try again to go
No.
the standard conventional style?
No. I control everything from art to the finished product. I control the timeline. I control the price point. I control all of it. I like to be in control. I don't want to cede control to anyone ever again.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, my first book, I had to fight for the cover art. I had to fight for the title, and it was just exhausting just to be constantly working like against people, basically.
Okay, well, as everybody can see, all of your books are in print.
Yeah.
Do you also have them in audio and e?
Yeah, so everything's an ebook on Amazon only because I'm part of their exclusive Kindle Unlimited program, which is a subscription program. You pay them $11 or $12 a month, and you can read any of the books in Kindle Unlimited, which is great if you're a voracious reader and read a book a day. It saves you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Book 1, Butter Sugar Magic, is an audio available on all audio platforms. And book 2, Bread Coffee Magic, will be available on all those platforms within the end of the month. Well, no, within the end of February, I would say.
Okay. Will you ultimately have all of your books in audio as well?
Yeah. So the other 2 are scheduled. My narrator's going to start working on them soon. And actually the other series, the Weird Words and Magic series, was picked up by an audiobook publisher, and I did sell them the rights to that. So
Wow.
you guys want to handle those? By all means, please.
Did they come to you?
Yeah, I met them at a conference, and then they contacted me, and they said they wanted the entire series.
Oh, fantastic. But they're not trying to get the first series with you?
No, they were just happy with just that one. So they wanted to have it from beginning to end, and I was already in contract with a narrator, and so.
How did you find your narrator?
I listened to a lot of books and I reached out to a lot of narrators. And then I went to a conference and I met this really lovely, lovely lady wearing a beautiful red dress, and she was so nice, and we hit it off, and so she got the book. Wow.
Is she's in another area, I take it?
Yeah, she's, I think, somewhere on the East Coast. She's lovely. She's very fun. We work really well together.
Oh, that's terrific. Okay, so the first book, because you were trying to get an agent, took you 5-6 months. How about your other books? How long is it taking you to write those?
It's actually pretty fast. Most of them have taken less than 2 months from original concept to finished product.
Okay.
Mostly because I've set them up for pre-order, and the clock ticks really fast, and all of a sudden there's usually a week or two where I'm working 24/7, and no one's allowed to come talk to me unless they're bringing me food.
Do you have a writing schedule?
I really need one. I really, in theory, should be sitting at my desk and writing for 2 hours and then doing all the other stuff, but I'm very bad at getting to work, so it never works out like that. So I have a beautiful schedule at the beginning that says I'm supposed to write X amount of words per day, and then I sit down and I'm like, okay, well, if it didn't do that, then I can add words to these days. I can add words to and at the end, I'm just powering through.
Do you write 7 days?
I try really hard not to write on the weekends. I need a little break. Otherwise, I'd be doing it all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so you finish a book, and do you have an editor that you use to look through them all?
So my first beta reader is actually my husband, which is very funny because this is not the Sean type of books he likes to read, but he is my biggest fan and also my harshest critic. He will walk in and he'll be like, there's no way any of these people are making these decisions. Write it again. The entire last third of the book doesn't work. Do it again. And he's always right.
Oh my gosh.
So he reads it first, and then I have a really good friend who's really detail oriented, and she reads it for consistency. And she'll be like, in the first book, that guy was named Jack. And now you call him Sam, you're gonna have to pick one of them. So she's really, really helpful for that. And after they read it and I tweak it, I send it to an editor who checks consistency, words, spelling, grammar.
Proofreader.
I'm terrible at commas. She puts all the right commas in. And then I get it back and I finish those edits. And then usually it goes out to advanced readers who read it and send me their edits as well. They'll be like, there's 14 typos on page 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
It's very distracting to read a book where there are errors.
Yes, very.
A fair amount. For some of us, I think they kind of hit you in the face, and it distracts from the book itself.
It pulls you out of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. There was an author years ago, and he wrote a book where he had the words "just then," like every 10 pages or so. It drove me nuts.
Yeah. I have a whole list of words that I look for to get rid of. Just is one of them.
Good.
No just.
Yeah, okay. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
All right. So, you mentioned that that it's called paranormal women's fiction. Why is it women's fiction?
So women's fiction is actually a really well-known genre that is stories about women and their experiences in life and going through life. And usually they have some challenge and some hurdle. And this is called paranormal women's fiction because it's that with a paranormal element.
Does the fact that it says women's fiction, does that discourage men from reading?
I haven't found so. I mean, I would say the majority of my readers are definitely women, but I have quite a few male fans.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that the women's word would not discourage me from reading it, but I sometimes wonder when it's when it's gender, when there's a gender comment or word in there, if it has any impact.
Yeah. I tend to prefer referring to it as either magical realism or cozy paranormal because it does apply to so many more people.
Yeah.
But technically that is the genre that was founded by those 13 authors, and so I wanted to start out that way. And
Got it.
diversifying since.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we're going to have to take a quick break, and then we shall return.
All right.
We'll be right back with Jessica.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
All right, we are back with Jessica Rosenberg. And what I failed to do in that first segment was to acknowledge our live audience. So, live audience, let's hear it. Okay, that's enough. Okay, so How did you come up with the name of your press, your self-publishing name? And tell us what it is.
So the name I publish under is Blue Octopus Press. Honestly, I was coming up with a name, and I have a rug in my office that has an octopus on it, and most names have like a something and a color, and so I was like, octopus, blue, let's do it.
That's great.
It's memorable. It works.
Yes. It certainly caught my attention. Okay, so you mentioned with Amazon and Kindle Unlimited and all that, and I'm not asking for any specifics, but I saw a lot of the books are free to those that have Kindle Unlimited.
Everything
right?
in Kindle Unlimited is free to people who have Kindle Unlimited.
How do you get paid?
By page. So they have a system. It's like a big pot. Somehow the math, they don't explain all that well, but basically the number of pages read that month, they divide it by the amount they've received in subscriptions that month, and then the authors get their allotted part for that. Oh,
that's interesting. So obviously you're hoping for a lot of page readings.
Yes. Page reads are good. And honestly, I'm just happy when people read the book, and I'm excited when people email me and they say, this really helped me, or this made me feel cozy, or this made me feel like I have friends waiting to see me every day. Or that matters more to me in the end.
What kind of social media do you use, and what kind of response do you get on that?
I tried really hard on TikTok. I really, really tried, and I decided it wasn't for me. So the only real social media I do is Instagram, and it's mostly pictures of my dogs. Just really honest. And I'm launching actually a subscription service really soon that's going to hopefully have more of a social component to it. So people are going to be able to read the books as I write them and give feedback on the chapters as I write them. I'm excited.
And so will there be some kind of like a membership for people to do that?
Yeah, so it'll be a membership. There'll be different tiers for it. One of the tiers is going to involve like getting a monthly sticker. I've got big plans. I need to rein myself in sometimes.
Oh, that's cool. I like to ask this question of the authors. How do you come up with your names for the characters?
Oh, it's awful. It's a nightmare. I have baby books on my shelves. And then I talk to my children. They're like, you cannot name that character that. So I outsource as much of the naming as possible. It's actually going to be one of the tiers in the subscription model is people are going to be allowed to help me name things. And they're going to think it's really cool. And I'm going to be like, thank goodness someone else is doing it for me. Naming stores is even worse. Because it's a shop street, and I've had to name all the different stores so hard.
I asked an author this recently, and he said that he just knows if it's the right name or not. Is that?
It is true.
Some of that too?
It's so true. And then there are two male characters, exactly two male characters in the first book. And I realized they were technically both named after one of my childhood friends, her nickname and her actual name. And I was like, I can't name both of them after her. Some of the characters come with their names and some of them really don't.
Well, that's the next question I was going to ask is, are any of the names based on real people?
No. I try really hard actually to be like, okay, do I know anyone who has this name? Well, they think this character is based on them, and I try really hard not to.
You seem very, very much happy with your genres. Do you ever foresee, ever is kind of a dumb word, but do you at some point in the future think that you might try a different genre?
I would love to write space opera.
Which is what?
Which is basically this kind of stuff, but in space. So it's like interaction stories. There's a space military, and then there's space opera, which is more people oriented. I really want to write that down the road, but I think I have 6 series in this world planned out. So it's going to have to wait.
Series?
Yeah.
Wow.
6 different main characters.
Wow. And are you looking at 3 to 4 books per?
Yes.
Is that kind of like a standard?
Yeah, that's what it's kind of to give the main character a nice story arc. Okay.
And so you're about, soon you're going to be coming out with your 3rd book in the 2nd series.
That's right.
Will you have a 4th and then move along?
I think I'm just going to do 3. I think her story wraps up really nicely at the end of the 3rd. And then there's going to be a series set in a diner with the main character can hear people's thoughts. And that is going to lead to a lot of shenanigans.
Yes, a number of things rushed into my head.
She's going to overhear something and misinterpret it, and it's going to go very wrong for everyone.
Will there be any recurring characters from the first 2 series?
Yeah, so it's all set in the same town. And so all of it is going to be centered around the same people. So there's going to be interactions with all of them. The 2 series currently, it's set in a bookshop and a bakery, and they're attached. They have an opening between the 2 of them. The diner is going to be up the street, so it's going to be a little bit more separate.
So you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 books for 6 series, and then you might consider something else.
Oh, maybe. People really, really like this world. And you talk about naming. I named the town as it was like a throwaway name. I was like, Portney, sounds lovely. And now it's like the center of my marketing and everything. And every time I think of it, I was like, why that name? Like, why did I come up with that name of all names?
That's funny.
Yes.
Did you ever read Portnoy's Complaint? I mean, maybe it has some... No kidding.
I have learned in the past that if a name comes fully formed to my head, I need to Google to see why.
Yeah.
I almost accidentally named a character after a porn star once. It's not good.
Okay. So if you ever thought about maybe not checking again, you trash that thought.
Yeah. Exactly. You always have to check.
Does this take place, this town, is it in a particular state?
It is a fictitious beach town about 20, 30 minutes out of Boston.
Okay. And what made you do the East Coast?
I really love New England. There was something about the seasons. The main character, she starts out in Georgia, and so she's driving up the coast, and there was something about a beach town in Boston that appealed to me. Yes, people have told me, they're like, it would be so nice if beach towns actually had no parking issues and the houses weren't too expensive. It was exactly like you write it.
Well, I'm going to guess that weather on the East Coast would have some bearing on the books.
Yes, and I have had one of my readers say, these people are having a really long conversation in the middle of a blizzard outside, and they're not wearing coats, so you're going to have to move that conversation indoors. And I was like, right, it's cold in the snow.
Hopefully that was before you published it.
Long before, yes.
So you said it took you about 2 months to write the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that about how long it takes you to write each book?
It comes out to about that once I get started. So I come up with the plot ahead of time. I plan the whole thing out, and then mostly chapter by chapter. And once I sit down and I start to write, it's really about 6 to 8 weeks.
So you're a plotter, not a pantser.
I used to be a pantser, and then I realized that you either spend the time working before or you spend the time working after, and it's much easier if you do it before.
Got it. So it takes you 6 to 8 weeks to write, and then how long does it take for all the help that you get to make sure it's ready to go?
Usually another month at least.
Okay. So basically 3 to 4 months and you're good to go.
Yeah. So I did 4 books last year. And it was a lot. So this year I'm going to try to do a little slower and only do 3.
Okay.
There was an unexpected moment. I had 2 books due the same weekend in October. It was not a pretty sight.
Does Amazon give you any grief over your timing for any of these things, or is it strictly up to you?
It's entirely up to me. I pick the deadline. I pick the date for the next release. If I can't make that deadline, Amazon allows you to shift it once by 30 days, and that's it.
Okay.
So you have to really think. It's easier. You can move it up, or you can't move it back. So it's easier to set the deadline way out and then move it up if I have the time.
Yeah. Okay.
I just learned that, though, back in October.
Was that when you were researching a specific name that you came across?
No, it was just 2 stories at the same time was a lot. Not doing that again.
It seems like it would be hard to kind of keep them separated.
Well, especially since one of them is actually set in a totally different world with totally different characters, and it's got wolf shifters instead of witches. It was complicated.
Okay, we talked about your narrators. Who does your book covers? Is it
My
one
book
person?
covers are done by one person. I researched a lot of books in the genre, and I picked the one that I liked best, and I reached out to her. Her name is Karen, and she is phenomenal. Her company is called Arcane published Arcane Covers.
Uh-huh.
She's fantastic. She has pulled me out of a bind more than once, because you do the ebook cover, and then once you know exactly how many pages the book is, you can do the paperback cover. And usually I'll be like, here's how many books. And then she's like, and where's the content for the back of the book? And I think, I need to write that. So then I write it really fast. And there have been times where I'm like, Karen, the book comes out in 3 days and I forgot to tell you I needed a cover. And she makes it happen. She's amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
She's great.
So when you decided to start writing, and you had this group, of course, that kind of led you to what you're writing about, did you have certain influences from authors that you've read through the years, or what kind of, who have you sort of looked toward?
So ironically, my father was a writer. So he's a very loud editor in my head. I try to ignore him more often than not. It leads me wrong. I have a lot of friends who are writers. I've been in the writing space for a long time. And so I pulled in from a lot of that. And I just really sat down one day and I was like, if I'm going to do this and make this a career, I need to really treat it like a career. And so I started really taking it seriously, doing a lot of research, finding out people I could find information about the process from, and picking and choosing from all of their advice to create something that worked for me. Are
you in a writing group or reading group?
I am not in either. Actually, I don't do well with feedback on the go, which is why this subscription is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. But so I try not to do that. I have friends who love their writing groups and their critique groups, and it doesn't work for me.
Have you come up with a time yet, or a time frame for, when you start this new program, this new subscription program?
I think I'm launching it next week. I'm working on some final technical details that this program I'm using is like Patreon, but just for authors. It's called Ream, R-E-A-M.
Okay.
And it's a very fledgling company, and they are having some growing pains, and I'm very excited to help support them. But at the same time, I'm like, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
You guys need to fix this.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it works out. But I think I'm set up to start launching it next week. So we'll see.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question that I have begun to ask authors. Do you have a favorite book and movie?
Not book that I've written personally.
No, correct.
Oof.
I know.
Well, that's really hard.
I know. It's kind of throwing a monkey wrench in here.
I can't say that I have a favorite book. I have favorite characters. Like, I have characters I really love to go back and reread. And movies, I'm much more of a TV show person than a movie person. But even that's impossible to give you a favorite.
Yeah.
I really love stories with great character developments. I am a sucker for stories about daddy issues. And family and found family and that kind of things. The kinds of stories where a group of people become a pack of friends. I love those. That's my favorite.
Okay. All right. It was a relatively unfair question with no warning. I totally understand that.
Even if I had warning, I don't know that I could answer. Today the answer would be different than yesterday and different than tomorrow. So.
Well, you notice it was at the end.
Yes.
So that if you were annoyed, it's kind of too late. The interview's done. Okay. All right. So we can look forward to book 3 and series 2 by the end of around the end of February, you said?
I'm hopeful it'll be out closer to April.
Okay.
Maybe the end of May. We'll see.
Okay.
March.
All right.
Around then. In the spring is what I'm hoping for.
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. So we're going to close the book on this interview. If you are interested in seeing other podcasts, you can go on, let's see, what is it? YouTube/Lloyd, I think. And you can always go on KCAT and check some things out there. There's a lot of great stuff on KCAT aside from the podcast. So once again, I would like to thank the audience for being here. And we'll see you next time.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.